Hey guys, how you doing? My name is Lena and welcome to another video. So sorry if I'm blending you by the way, but I can barely see anything today. So I'm so sorry. But today we're going to continue with a guide that I made, was it 2-3 months ago? I can't even remember. But it was a guide to sci-fi and I did the first one for beginners. So now that you have already read all of those, let's continue. I'm going to include here, they are mostly pretty like running towards space operas, more than just like, I don't know, Sight, for example. But yeah, let's just get started. Even though I have pretty weird books here. And I actually need to update my first list because I have more, as Sci-Fi for beginners, but that's another thing. So let's just get started with this one. So please, if you have not checked the first video, start there. I would recommend start reading sci-fi through these books, but if you're interested, well, you do you. So let's get started. This might actually be not a bad place to start. This is Stories of Your Life and Others by Ted Chiang. It has 8 short stories and they are not connected to one another or anything, but this actually has the story that the movie The Arrival was based on, so if you're into that, you can try and read this, but this is a good mix of kind of pretty low sci-fi and pretty straightforward sci-fi, like The Arrival. So yeah, overall, I think that you might actually enjoy this. It can be like a first tipsy into lipsy. What the hell am I saying? Like a first step. It could be nice. Would I recommend if you have never read sci-fi starting on this? Probably not. And if you don't like short stories, you might actually like this one. I'm not a huge fan of short stories. I said it multiple times, but this one pretty okay for me. Now, let's talk about The Collapsing Empire by John Scalzi. I think that this is a pretty good, like, intermediate sci-fi. It's not wholly, like, overly the top sci-fi, and it's not really simple. It's just, like, a good middle there. Basically, humans have discovered this thing called the flow that allows them to basically travel faster than light while staying in this flow. So they have basically expanded all over the galaxy. One thing turns pretty wrong when apparently the flow is starting to change course and it's basically leaving some planets out of this way of travel. So yeah, it's cutting basically these planets from civilization. The premise is great. I really was surprised with this first book. I liked it so much more than All Men's War. So much more. But yeah, I would say that it's a pretty easy sci-fi to go. It's not extremely large with some other ones here are pretty large. Sorry. It's actually a trilogy. The 3 books are pretty reasonable size. So yeah, I would highly recommend this one. I really like it. I need to continue with the second book soon. Then I have here The 3-Body Problem by Cixin Liu. This book is complicated. I won't lie to you. This is not a space opera. It's, well, this is most centered around Earth, but it's so heavy on science that you might have a hard time. I mean, the story in itself is very interesting. I really liked it, and overall, it's fantastic. But towards the middle and the end, there's just like info dumping physics at you, and if you have never heard about any of it, you're going to be just like, sure, whatever you say, man. So yeah, that's kind of the down and why I wouldn't really start this one. It's just like, damn. Just let me try and explain this book to you. It's fairly weird and complex, but basically we start up following this scientist. The weird thing is that the laws of physics have stopped working, so everyone is freaking out, and at the same time we follow this other guy who is putting himself in this kind of video game simulation where he has to save this civilization from destruction And I won't say much because even though I think that it's fairly complicated, I actually think that you should discover everything for yourself because it takes it's a long book. It's hard, but it's fantastic. Then we have here Hyperion by Dan Simmons. This is a pretty weird one because even though I really enjoyed it, it's not marketed as a short story collection, but it definitely is. I mean, we follow these 7 pilgrims and they are trying to get into this place where this kind of monstrous machine, kind of mythological being exists, and well, where it lives. They basically start telling their stories about how they actually came on contact first with this thing, and every story is separate from one another and is told in a different form. For example, you have kind of a thriller, you have a diary, and that's a collection of short stories. Overall, I really like Hyperion, but I would have liked someone to tell me that this was actually more of a short story collection. But at the same time, I really think that you can give Hyperion a try. You're actually going to find something that you might like because, I mean, they are told in so many different ways, like spies and thrillers, and yeah, I'm pretty sure that you might find something. Then I have here Empire of Silence by Christopher Rocchio, and I have to say that this is the easiest one on the series to follow because it's pretty centered around this arena where our main character has to compete to survive, but the other ones have nothing to do with this one. In the sequel, he gets this ship and he's just roaming around the galaxy, and the same with the third one. So yeah, don't take the first one as a representation of the series because I think they are fairly different from one another. But let me tell you what Empire of Silence is about. This is the first book in the Sun Eater series, not a trilogy. And we follow Hadrian telling us his life story, and he starts up by saying that he is guilty of blowing up an entire solar system. That's not good. That's not good. But yeah, this story is great. His growth throughout the different books, it's amazing. I loved it. The second one is I don't know which one is my favorite. The second one or the third one, because I got an arc of the third one. But yeah, don't let this one I will say that the first one is my least favorite of the 3 that I have read so far. Well, that are out so far. But yeah, I really love this series. It's one of my favorite of all time. So yeah, highly recommend this one. But yeah, I will say that this one has kind of more fantasy elements to it than the other books. The other ones are fairly strictly science fiction. Then we have here the Light Brigade by Cameron Hurley, and this was so good. Did I talk about this book? Yeah, I have to already talk about this book, but I got to it through Angela from Literature Science Alliance, and it was fantastic. I don't know why, but even though I knew about this book, I didn't grab it because I've heard really mixed things about Cameron Hurley's books. So I don't know, I was pretty conflicted and I didn't pick it up, but what a mistake. I have already also bought another one by her. I just recently bought Stars of Legend, so we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, the Light Brigade. What an amazing book. I mean, so we basically follow Ditz, and she's a woman, by the way. Because everyone that I have spoken about this book with was mistaken about thinking she was a man, but she is not. She's a woman. She's fighting in this war against Mars, and they have discovered this way of troop deployment that is based around fragmenting them into light and making reconstruct them in the surface, basically. So once she goes through that, something goes wrong, and I won't tell you much because I think that this book is fantastic in its storytelling, and it just gives you like these small details every time so you can make their story. But yeah, I will tell you that something goes wrong. Oh, this book is so good. I wish, please, if you know more books about it, that are like this, let me know. I'm just dying to read something similar. Then, let's talk about The Expanse, shall we? I've told you in the first book that I really think that Leviathan Wakes is a pretty good, step into sci-fi, but I only think that from the first book. I think that from the second book and beyond, it's a bit more complicated, so I wouldn't start reading sci-fi just by reading these books. I will read something else and then jump into The Expanse, but still, The Expanse is fantastic, it's magnificent. It's my favorite sci-fi series. I still need to read the 8th one, but I'm not ready mentally yet. But still, let's just talk about Leviathan Wakes. So basically, humanity has colonized most of the solar system, and we have divided ourselves into the Earthers, the Martians, and the Belters. So we follow two different characters. One of them is a Belter. He is called Detective Miller, and he is investigating the disappearance of this girl. And the other one is James Holden, who actually witnesses the destruction of a ship by a Martian ship. And this kind of makes things really bad for everyone. I don't want to say more. It's just so easy to spoil this book. When you start reading the series, you can fairly easily say it that almost each one of the books is a different story, but all of them have something that connects them to the others and to this kind of big reveal at the end. And it's just like, you get these like little things and you're just like, what the hell is going on? I have no idea, and I'm on book 8. And it's going to be a 9-book long series, I think, according to an interview with the authors. But yeah, I love The Expanse. I think that my favorite book is Caliban's War, because it has a trope that I love, but I won't tell you because spoilers. But this one is so good. The 5th one, that first part is just like damn. But yeah, probably the second one. So let's talk about this little monster. This is Pandora Star by Peter F. Hamilton. I have talked about this series a good amount already, and Peter F. Hamilton is a really wide-known author of science fiction, but his books are gigantic. As you can probably tell, this is more than 1,000 pages. It's 1,100 pages. So yeah, they are long. So don't start with this one, please. Whatever you do, don't start with this, because it's overly long. You spend so much time on the world building. It might be a bit kind of asphyxiating if you have never read sci-fi, so please don't. But yeah, in Pandora Star, we basically follow these scientists at the beginning, and also we have tons of characters in this, so be careful. But yeah, we follow this scientist, and he's just like chilling, observing stars, and then one of them just vanishes. No explosion, not anything. It's just 1 second is there and 1 second is not. So yeah, I will leave it at that. It's this one is so good. I love it. This is definitely Pandora's and Judas Unchained are my favorite by him. I haven't read all of them, but still fantastic series. I love this duology. It's just, I love when an author spends time developing the world, because there are so many different planets, and even though most of the inhabitants are human, they have like different cultures and such, and it's just so good. Then, this is Dune by Frank Herbert, and again, now that the film is being hyped up and such, please don't start reading sci-fi with Dune, because the first 100 pages of this book are a bit of a torture. I won't lie to you. I still really liked it. I give this 4 stars, I think, 4.5. But the first 100 pages were a struggle. Oh, I don't love Frank Herbert's writing, and the beginning is just fairly confusing. There's just like, oh, this is going to happen, it's going to happen, but then it slows down, and it's really weird. So please don't do this. So basically in Dune, we have this thing called Melang. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but it's kind of the most special thing in the world, and it's only and you can only find it in this planet, this desert planet called Arrakis, and the Emperor sent this family there, but you know, politics, so they basically murder the Duke, and basically only his concubine and his son are able to flee. So yeah, I won't tell you much, but the first 150 pages are just like, oh my god, when is this going to start? It's just, it's weird. Once you read it, you will understand it. Then we have here a recent read of mine. I think I haven't talked about this book yet, but this is Seveneves by Neil Stephenson, and I loved this book, in case you didn't know it, and that's why it's here. I will say that it's a pretty soft science fiction. It's only focusing on Earth and operating through Earth, basically. But it's more of a science-heavy science fiction, like the Three-Body Problem. But dude, this was so good. I don't love kind of generational stories, but it's not like that. You know, it was really advertised to me really wrong, because there's a time jump on the, you can say the, yeah, I just opened it on the page and damn. We have a time jump of 500 years, so that's not a generational story. It's literally, this is the present and this is 500 years later. Just that. And I get what you would call it generational, but no, it's not like the usual generational story. So I will highly recommend that you try it if that's what was making you hesitate. Basically, in this book, the moon explodes, but not in just like boom, and no, it basically dissolves into these fragments, and nothing really strange happened at first, but scientists made this estimation that in a couple of years, they are all going to fall, all these fragments are going to fall into the atmosphere, and it's going to create like this sky of flames that is going to burn out the whole planet. So they make this kind of plan to save humanity, and we have these astronauts and that thing, and it was so good. This has all the tropes that I like. It has the confined people, the apocalypse trope, everything. I really liked it. I heard so many people complain about the 500 years later, but I think that it was a necessary part. It's not overly long. It's just like 300 pages from a almost 900 page book, so it's not that hard. But yeah, the first part, loved this book completely. I really loved it. But yeah, I highly recommend this one. And the last book. It looks weird, okay? My edition is weird, but this is Annihilation by Jake Vandermeer. This is the bind-up of the 3 novels, and I get that Annihilation is not for everyone at all. It's a really weird sci-fi story, and I get that, but I really love it. So let me tell you a bit. So basically, in Annihilation, we discovered that there's this thing called Area X, where a weird kind of phenomenon is happening, and the government is sending like expeditions, and basically they are coming back insane. Some of them are not coming back, and they decide to basically make a new expedition and follow one of the doctors, and I really liked it. You have probably seen the TV adaptation from Netflix, and I have to say that it didn't disappoint me, but at the same time it did a bit. Although they made one more scene that wasn't on the book that was fantastic. Loved it. But yeah, I will tell you, it's really weird. It's especially weird, this one. But I really like it. And don't go in there waiting to have answers, because that's not how this works. But yeah, overall, I really liked it. I had a great time listening to this audiobook, by the way, which is fantastic, and you might want to try it. So yeah, those were basically all the new recommendations that I have to make. They're kind of more intermediate sci-fi to kind of more advanced sci-fi, if that makes sense. But yeah, please don't start with this one. Well, you can start with the Light Brigade. The Light Brigade is not that complicated. Or even though it kind of has like different times and such, so it might be a bit complicated, but I think that you will be good to go. So yeah, that's going to be all for today. I really hope that you enjoyed my sci-fi recommendations, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!